Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another stream right here on Free Will Photos. Today we are looking at masking inside of ON1 Photo Raw, and I'm pretty excited. I got my man Mr. Waffles in the room with me today, so hopefully he chills out, but as he gets excited, I may have to pause just to let him out so he can go be with our family. Obviously, this is a new time slot for the live stream, and I'm just trying to figure out what works the best in my day-to-day routine, especially over the weekend. As it was in the middle of the day, so kind of impeded a little bit on family time, and just made it a little bit challenging for us to do things over the weekend. So I'm going to see if this is a good time slot. And, if you can't watch it live, then I fully understand, but you can always check out the restream. So I'm going to go ahead and move on into today's lesson. So we're going to start off here with some slides. Now, I'm starting off with slides, and yes, I figured it out. I got the slides to work. There's only 6 of them, but if you want to follow along, it's probably worth mentioning that most of this information, or all of this information, I'm going to put it in my own words, but all of this information can be found inside of the ON1 user guide, pages 101 through 103. I know many of us, we don't pick up that user guide, but I guarantee you that there is some useful information inside of there. So let's go ahead and move on with our slideshow. So when do you add a mask to an image? And I guess before we even go any further, what the heck is a mask? And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but a mask is essentially something that covers up a portion of your photo so that the other portion of your photo shows an effect. All right. So it's almost like adding an effect to a very specific location. It's going to make sense when we get into the demonstrations. Now, the answer to when do you add a mask, obviously, it's when you need to hide a portion of an effect, a local adjustment, or your image. All right. That's very important. All right. So where can I find a mask at inside of ON1? There are 3 locations that masks are inside of ON1. The first one is the effects module. I think this is where most of us are going to use it. The second one is the local adjustments module. This is the second most useful place for a mask. And I will make note that there is a little bit of a difference, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. And then number 3 is on layers. This is where you're cutting away pixels. Think of this as like the Photoshop type masking, where you're trying to blend and composite images. That's typically when you're using a mask on the layer level. Sorry, had to clear my throat. So what are the differences between a local adjustment and an effect? Now, many of you may not realize this, but a local adjustment and an effect, those are both using mask in most cases, and I'll show this in the live example here in a second. But essentially, the effects will allow you to use the AI masking tool, where the local adjustment doesn't have the AI masking tool. So you're going to say, well, what if I want to use the AI masking tool to define my mask, and then I want to move it over to the local adjustment? Is there a way to do that? And the answer is yes. There's absolutely a way to do that. However, just keep in mind that if you want to use the AI masking tool, you're going to have to be on either the effects module, on a mask inside of the effects module, or on a mask inside of the layer module. All right. Just make sure that you are in one of those places. Now, let's make a really quick overview. So, if you have never seen the masking feature inside of ON1 and you're like, I have no idea what a mask looks like inside of ON1 or what the masking options look like inside of ON1. Let me go ahead and walk you through this really quickly. So the number one, that indicates the mask preview. This is useful. It's kind of small and, but it's useful at a glance, especially when you have multiple effects and many different masks. Maybe this is just a way for you to look at it really quickly and say, oh, this is what mask I have on. All right. Just of note, white shows whatever the effect is and black hides whatever the effect is. So anything you see in white, that means that the effect that you applied, or the image, if you're cutting away the image will show in those areas, or the effect will show in those areas. And if it's black, then the image is cut away or removed from the areas or masked in those areas. And then if it's black on an effect, then that means the effect just won't show up in that area. Now, if it's a shade of gray somewhere in between, that means the effect is not applied completely to that area. It's only applied a little bit, and we'll get into that here in a second. In the live demonstration, I'll get into that. Give me 1 second. Okay, so number two, mask in the mask interactive buttons. Now, these buttons are extremely useful. Every time I make a mask, I'm using at least the copy button or the invert button. And if I make a mistake, guess what? I'm using the reset button. So these buttons are extremely helpful. So I recommend you get familiar with using them. And we'll even talk about the Lumen button because that's a very cool one and it'll come in handy as well. So the third thing, moving down the line now, is density. This adjusts the amount between black to white for the mask. Now, think of this as a fade on the mask. All right. When it's up at 100%, there is no fade, and the mask is there's nothing else that gets through unless you punch a hole in the mask. All right. Now, as you move it down to the left, the mask itself becomes less dense, or there's less need for you to punch a hole into the mask because it's just going to start allowing whatever your adjustment is or whatever the original image is to start showing through. So this one, it'll make sense when I show you the live demonstration. Number 4 is feather. Now this is one of my favorite features inside of the masking tool, and I think that you guys are gonna really enjoy using this as well. Whenever you make a selection, sometimes your selections, they're just rough and jagged and they don't work very well. Well, when you use the feather, this will add a blur to your mask in the overall mask, and it just smoothens out the blend of the original with your masked in effects or whatever it is that you're doing. All right. You can go overboard with the feather and just make it like a blur. And, so just use that with reason. But number 5 is levels. All right. This allows you to set your black and white points for your mask. This is very important, especially when we get into the luminosity mask. All right. I'm going to really walk you through that. And the same thing with window. This adjusts the white and black point overall, where levels gives you 3 points of adjustment. You only got 2 points on windows. All right. That's either 100% dark or 100% bright or white, right? 100% black, 100% white. And then on the levels, you kind of have like this grayscale in the middle, where you can lean your mask either more into protecting or selecting the darker pixels or protecting or selecting the brighter pixels. That'll make sense when I show it to you. And then the last one is color range, and this allows you to target a specific color in the image to mask in or out. This is a really cool tool, and we'll use that today as well. So mask overlay modes, and this is the last slide, by the way. Mask overlay modes. So switching your mask overlay is as simple as going up to the top of your menu bar and selecting mask, scrolling down until you get to view modes, and you'll see that you have 3 modes there. The red overlay, which is the image directly to the center of this particular slide. Obviously it's got red. And what this shows is anything that where there's red, that means the effect is not applied, at least in this particular image. And then anything that shows color is showing you where the effect is applied. This I don't use as often. I thought I would, when I discovered it, I thought I'd be excited and I would use it a lot, but I don't use it as often. The one that I use the most is actually the grayscale, and that's the one shown on the right. As you can see, the grayscale allows you to really kind of fine tune what it is you are editing here. So this is the reason why I use the grayscale. You can see it a lot better. Obviously anything that's white is going to show the effect, and anything that's black is going to hide the effect. Now, one of the ways that you can toggle on, obviously I showed you on the previous slide that you could hit the view button, but if you want to toggle on your masking effect really quick and easy, you can hit the letter O on your keyboard and it will turn your mask on and off, and you can see it large scale over your image. And I'll show you that as well in the live demonstration. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the live demonstration. So what I have here is a couple of photos. I got 5 of them, and like always, you can go down into the description box and you can follow along by downloading these images, and we're just going to mess around with some masks on these images. All right. So the very first one, I'm just going to open this up and we're going to go over some of the basics of masking tools inside of ON1 Photo Raw. So the way that I like to show the masking tool is really by adding some filter that's just going to be extremely obvious that you add it. And the best filter that I can think of for a color photo is a black and white photo, right? And obviously when you click it, it's going to apply it to the entire image. Now, let's just assume I don't want this entire image to be black and white. This is where masking comes in, and your own creativity. Instead, maybe I just want the bottom half of this image to be black and white. Now, the very first thing that you're going to do is click on the little icon to the left of your layer or your effect name, which in this case is black and white. So to the left, there was a little icon that looked like a rectangle with a circle in it. When you click that, it's going to open up your masking options. So I'll click that, and now you can see the masking options. Everything above color range is your masking options, and then everything below is your filter options. All right. So you can see in action what all this is. Now, what wasn't in the slideshow is the toolbar up here at the top. Whenever you click the mask, you're going to get a toolbar to work with. And you can tell that you're in the masking toolbar if you come over to the far left and you see where it says mask over here. That's going to let you know that you are in the masking brush option. All right. And the very first thing that you get is just a basic brush. Now, this is very simple, right? Right now, I have the brush. I'm going to click one time and that removes the mask. The reason why I removed the mask is one, I have the negative icon, right? There's a little minus sign in the middle of my circle there, and that is for paint out. The reason I know it's for paint out is because up here at the top it says paint out. Now if I click in there, I can do paint out or paint in. Paint in will allow me to repaint whatever I just removed from the mask. And if you look over here on the right hand side, you can see that my preview is updated. And if I hit the letter O, you can see that I have white where all of my black and white effect is showing, and then black where none of my black and white effect is showing. And you can see that very easily with the color being here and this being black and white. Now I'm going to hit reset. And because I want to paint just this section here, my recommendation is to always make your mask, make the least work possible for yourself. All right. So I'm going to hit invert, and that's going to hide the effect completely. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm on paint in, and then I'm going to literally paint in the effect where I want it, right? So now I'm making this umbrella, and I'm just going to do a very rough job here just to show you the power of the tools and masking in general. But please take some time to really fine tune your masking, and I will show you some of the tools that ON1 has built in that allows for masking to be a little bit easier. But this is just a very rough way. Like, if you wanted to color in your mask and make your selections the way that you wanted to, this is a way of doing it. And as you can see, I now have the bottom portion, and very selectively the bottom portion, black and white. All right. This may not be something that you want, but I'm just showing you that you can do it. Let's go ahead and reset that. Now you have a few different shape options here, or style. You can save some styles once you have all of this stuff dialed in, which I'm not going to go into great detail because, like, masking is a very deep topic. But you do have some brushes. So maybe you want to mask in a tree. I don't know why you would put a tree on a beach, but hey, we're going to put a tree in the sky. We're still on paint in, and I'm going to get a tree shape. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to invert my mask. I'll just go with paint out. So Shift X, and I changed my my masking option to paint out. So I'm going to delete right there a tree shaped sky imprint, and that could come in handy. Now where this gets really fun is getting a brush. You can get Photoshop brushes, and I don't think I have, oh, I do have some paint brushes in here. So I can click on something like this. Let's go ahead and reset that and go to paint out. I'm going to make my brush just a little bit smaller, and I can just click, and using a brush like, and I'm just messing around here. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with a paintbrush, or at least with a mask using the paintbrush. But let me just reset that one more time. You can come up here to the gear icon, and you can mess around with the manual spacing, and this will, as you move the brush up and down, you can see it's leaving gaps, right? So you can mess around with that. There's just so many options. We're not going to get into all of them. You can even change the angle of the brush. So if I want to paint in this direction as opposed to the other direction, you can change the flow of the brush. So now it's not going to paint out completely. I can change the opacity. And I've gone over this in previous videos. And now I'm starting to get like this more faded effect, right? Now, you can definitely just hit reset and drag your opacity slider down. This saves you the brushing. But if you want to mask it in to a very specific area, you can just paint over it and mask it in to make it a little bit more fine-tuned of what it is that you want to do. All right, I guess I would have to go paint in to actually make a paint. All right, so those are the options when it comes to the brush. The brush is pretty easy, straightforward. You can even feather the brush. You just got to play around with these tools. All right. Now, what we're going to do is go to the masking bug. Again, I want the bottom half of this photo to show just the black and white effect. So I'm going to click one time. Oh, I guess I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to come up here, and where it says preset none, I'm going to come down and I'm going to click linear top. Now, again, white reveals and black conceals. So when I click here, as you can see, I get the bottom half of my photo is black and white, and the top half of my photo is color or in color. And then there's this nice transition between the black and white all the way to the color. I can click and drag this all the way out and make a really long transition. I can rotate this around, so maybe I want it to be sideways, and then I can reposition, and you can do all kinds of stuff. Now when I hit the O key, this is what I get. 100% of the effect is showing here, and then it goes gradually until it gets to 50% of the effect right here. Okay, so this is 0 to 50, and this is 51 to, or I'm sorry, 0 to 50, and then 51 to 100. All right, because the effect is showing here, and then it's gradually going backwards. So this dotted line represents 0 or 100%, I guess in this case, of showing it, and this dotted line represents 0. And then there's a nice gradual transition between these two dotted lines, with the 50% mark being there. Now, if I wanted to make it smaller and make it transition faster, all I have to do is click and drag this in. And now my 100% mark is a lot closer to my 50% mark, which means my transition is going to happen a lot faster. All right, and these are proportionate. That is, anytime you use the gradient tool, you're going to get proportionate transitions. There are other tools, such as the center tool, which this is a radial adjustment. And obviously, I am making everything outside of the circle at this current moment black and white, and everything inside of the circle is going to be color. And then there's this gradient transition, and this is from 0, meaning no effect is applied beyond the boundary or inside of the boundaries of the circle, all the way out until the dotted line, where it goes into 100% of the effect being added beyond the dotted line. And as I drag that out, you can see my transition grows, and as I bring it in, it gets smaller. And yes, you can bring it into the circle to kind of taper it in a different way, but I don't recommend it. It doesn't look good. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit O and show you what this looks like, right? So there it is with 100% of the taper, and then bringing it in, it tapers out as well. Does the same thing, just, you know, harder to tell where your transition is. All right. And then if I wanted it to be the opposite of that, I can hit invert, and that's one way of doing it. But that didn't actually change my my actual radial filter or my gradient tool. So what I'm going to do, instead of hitting center, I'll hit edges. And what that does is it applies the effect to the outside of this particular filter or radial tool, circle thingy-majig. That's what we'll call it, circle thingy-majig. Super technical, right? And as you can see, I get the black and white effect on the inside, and then it just gradually fades out. And then there is the gradient, which we've already discussed, and the reflected gradient. Now, the reflected gradient is one of my favorite masking tools when it comes to doing like blurs and things of that sort, because instead of getting an even transition between a center point, what you do is you start and stop two 100% transitions. What does that mean? This is the effect 100% not applied, or 0%, and this is the effect 100% applied on the other side of the dotted line, right? So if I drag this all the way out, I get the effect 100% over here, and then starting just on the other side of the dotted line, it goes to 99 all the way down until it gets to 0. There's nothing affected here, so I can protect this area all day long. No matter where I move this, there will never be any effect in there. And then it picks up again, starting from here, 0% of the effect, and then it fades all the way out until it hits this line, and that hits 100%. And then it goes beyond the line up until infinity and beyond and all that good stuff, right? 100%. So this is a really cool and easy way of adding in a filter. Now, I'm going to go ahead and reset that. The last thing that I'll go over, as far as just showing you the tools before we dive into the options over here in the menu, is the AI masking. Now, this is a lifesaver and a time saver. So what I'm going to do is, again, I only want the mask to apply to the bottom portion of the photo. I'm going to click and drag over the sky with the drop feature. And I know that I'm on drop because, one, I have the little minus icon inside of my brush, and then two, up here where it says mode, there's only two of them, drop and keep. So when I click on drop, it gives me this red marker, and I can paint everywhere that I don't want ON1 to add the effect. All right, very simple. That's the best way of working with AI Auto when it comes to effects, is by, and you don't have to be very precise, right? I just decided to paint the whole sky for the most part. Now I'm going to click on drop and change that to keep. I get a plus icon on my brush. I'm going to bring that down here to the bottom, and I'm going to paint over all of this down here at the bottom. And guess what that's going to do? It's going to keep the information, right? So drop gets rid of information, keep keeps the information. It's like weird how that works. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And what's going to happen is, as you can see, it gives me a mask again. Now I can see that it missed some areas here, so I'm just going to click over that because I want to keep that. And then I'm going to hit apply again, and it's going to give me that area back. This does not always work, but that's okay. Now, once you get to all of this, you can literally just hit done and watch as the mask is applied to the bottom of the image. just as I was saying before, and I'll hit O so you can see it a little bit better. And I have a mask down here where the effect is showing. All of this is black and white. And then up here, I have no effect showing, and this is in color. And you can see that. So, you know, now it's like, all right, well, I need to fix this little part of the umbrella. I'm just going to go ahead and, oh, I'm in the refine. I didn't pay attention to that. We'll come back to the refine. I'm going to go back to mask. I'm going to use my brush, and I better make this a regular brush. And as you can see, I have a feather on my brush, which is extremely helpful. To zoom in without having to go over here to the zoom tool and, you know, go back and forth, quick tip is to hold down Command or Control and then just hit the plus icon. This is a zoom, and then you can hold down the space bar. This is going to give you your little navigator tool to move around the image. And now I can get to the spot without ever having to leave my masking area. So I'm just going to paint this back in. The reason why it's not working so well is because my opacity is at 20 and my flow is at 46. I'm gonna just put those both up to 100 so I can paint this effect in completely in the areas that it needs to be painted in. And that works for now. And then to zoom out, if you hit Command or Control and then the number 0, it's going to bring you back to 100% of your image. So that way you don't have to go back and forth. That's a really easy way of navigating your images without ever leaving the masking tool. If you didn't know that, now you do. All right. So now I have shown you the masking bug. I have shown you the AI masking tool, and I've also shown you the masking brush for the most part, right? There's still a lot of utility in the masking brush because we haven't used the perfect brush just yet. Because if I wanted to get these edges, which let's say that I do, all right? So I'll just go ahead and zoom those edges in right there. I'm gonna hit the Command, or I'm sorry, you can hit Command R or Control R. This is going to give you your magic brush, or perfect brush, not magic brush. What it does is it allows you to keep your cursor on an edge, and as long as you keep it on the edge, it should apply whatever your mask is. Now, as you can see, I'm going over the edge, so I've kind of just ruined my mask. But the cool thing about a mask is they're non-destructive, so I can always just go back and repaint it. Now, the perfect brush is great if you're making a selection initially, but if you want to refine a mask, there's like a legitimate tool called the refine tool. So what I'm going to do is hit Command Z and get rid of some of these brush strokes because they don't look very good. All right, except for right here. I'll come back and add this in. All right, let's go Command 0, and there we go. We're back to the fit for the image. Now, next thing that I'm going to show you is all these tools. So obviously we have invert, reset, copy, and we'll use the copy and paste feature here in a second. The next thing is going to be density. Now, density, as I told you before, this is like a fade. The best way of showing you is by hitting O. Now that you understand, like you can read this overlay, right? Black conceals, white reveals, and we know that this is in black and white and this is in color right now. But if I start to pull down on this density slider, watch what happens to my mask. This area right here just started to turn to a shade of gray, and it almost matches the background. It's a little bit brighter than the background, but I'm going to keep pulling it, and as you can see, it's getting more and more gray. So what is that doing to the image? Let's go ahead and hit O. We're at 61%. And as you can see, the background is a little bit more subdued or faded, right? And as I pull it down even further, you're going to see the colors start to fade away and more of the black and white effect is showing here. So when is this, a helpful tool to know that is available? Well, in cases like this, where I want the effect to be 100% down here at the bottom, but I don't want it to be 100%. I want it to be, maybe 60% or 40% or something like that up here at the top. Then that's when you go ahead and drag your density fader either down even more, and you're retaining some of the color, and that could be the effect right there. It blends really well with the image because it looks like it's mostly black and white, but it's not. All right. This is why density is here, and you can use this in so many different creative ways. I don't know, let me know in the comment section some of the ways that you would use the density fader in your photos. And let me get a quick sip of my tea here. All right. The next slider, and I'm going to go ahead and move this all the way up. Next slider, I'll zoom in a little bit as well so you can see what's actually happening here. And this is actually going to work out really great because we got like that little corner fringe or whatever, the edge not fully selected. I'm going to pull my feather slider to the right. And as you can see, there's a transition coming down from no effect applied to the effect being fully applied. It's like a gradient, but specifically for your edges. Now, this comes in great when you are needing to paint in certain areas, as I'm doing at this current moment. Now, because I'm feathering, it's also applying the feather as I'm painting it. So I can get like a really nice transition, especially when you're doing a mask of like colors or contrast or something where you don't want it to be as obvious that you painted this in and you want to make it look like it was a gradual fade. Using the feather on the overall mask will greatly help you because it just feathers out those edges a little bit more. And of course, you can overdo it and really make that transition from the top to the bottom stand out. And this is what your overlay looks like. It just transitions very gradually from the top to the bottom. So I have really sharp edges there, and then I'm fading all the way out. All right. So that's one way of refining your mask. So let's hit O, and I'm going to go ahead and reset this mask one more time. And I'm going to now click on the Lumen tab. Now, the Lumen tab is going to apply your effect based off of the luminance values or the brightness values of the pixels below it. All right. This matters. And one of the things that I have to, caution you about is depending on how bright your image is going to impact your ability to use the luminosity masking tool. All right. So if you have a super dark image, you're probably going to need to brighten up your image just a little bit, unless that's what you're going for, is applying your mask to the darkest pixels in the image. All right. Now, this is literally just to make a selection. So once you make a selection and you have that selection made, you can then get rid of whatever adjustments. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer underneath, because it has to come before it hits the overall image. And I am just going to boost all of this. So, or actually I'm gonna pull it down because it's a pretty bright image. So I'm gonna make it darker. All right. This is noticeably darker than what it was. And I'll show you this in the histogram so you can really see. So here's where most of my color information or the photos information is. And then when I click on curves, it just shifts everything to the left, obviously moving it closer to the blacks and shadows. All right. So now I'm going to come over here to the black and white adjustment layer, and I'm going to reset my luminosity mask. And this is specifically so I can show you that when you hit the lumen, it's going to add the effect. If I hit O, everywhere where it's white, the effect is showing, and everywhere where it's gray, the effect is kind of not showing. This looks like a black and white image. The difference here is I can move my levels around. So if I want this to show more in the brighter areas, I can move this away from the shadowed areas. And now my shadows are not getting as much of the effect, as you can see. And then what I said earlier when we were looking at the slides was you can kind of build a gradient between your shadowed areas and your brighter areas, right? So I can use this middle fader to move it closer to my brighter areas. So now the effect is only going into the brighter areas. Now, mind you, I still have the overlay on. When I turn the overlay off, you're going to see the effect applied. So now I'm only adding in a desaturation or a black and white effect really in these clouds. Let's go ahead and turn that back on. Yeah. So it's not happening at all down here. And you can tell because this is not in black and white. Now, when I pull this down, if you look internal to here, it gets a little bit more faded. Now, this is like an extremely, extremely subtle thing. All right. So what I'm going to do is actually crank up the window. And this is where window really comes in. Now, mind you, you're not going to see, I'll reset this. Window is not an option that you can move unless you hit lumen or you're using color range. You have to use something that has a range that needs to be defined in order for window to be activated. And what that's going to let you do is choose how much, like this is like 100% either black or white, right? So what I always recommend whenever you click on lumen is you start with window. I know it's down here at the bottom, but what it's going to do is really give you your left and right parameters to work inside of. And then you can use levels to fine tune where you want that effect to go. So let's say we just want this interior portion to get the black and white effect. Well, since that's in the shadow, then I know I need to move everything down into the shadow tonal range. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my window down just until I start to really select that shadowed area, which now it's starting to get it. And now I can fine tune that by moving my slider deeper into the shadows and then even bringing my whites down. So now I'm really targeting that area. And if you look at, this is just a very simple rule of thumb. If you get your faders, if you only want to focus on the shadowed areas, you want to bring your three little dots in between the window here. All right. And the smaller your window is, the more fine-tuned or minute your transitions are going to be. Now, I'm selecting more and more of this, this umbrella the more I bring this up to like the middle grays instead of the whites. And then I can literally just start really getting in there and fine tuning a little bit more. But this is something that you have to play around with, and eventually you will figure, okay, this is how I get that particular selection. Now, when I hit O, as you can see, I have a very, very specific selection, and all I used was faders over here or sliders over here. All right. Now, let's go ahead and reset this as well. Hit O, and we're going to go ahead and click on color range. Now, color range is a fun one. All right. I'm just going to show you how to use this really quick because I could go on and on about color range, but it is a fun one. So we're going to hit the eyedropper. We're going to click inside of the umbrella, and boom, it selects the color based off of what you clicked on inside of your image. So now it's only applying my black and white filter to this particular range. Now, I have a way of identifying where in the range I want this to go. I can either drag this all the way to the left, and then I start to get more specifically just that color, or I can drag it to the right and it starts to include a little bit more similar colors to the one I selected. So now, as you can see, it's getting the ground, it's getting the wood on the chairs, and it's getting this particular umbrella. And if I hit O, you'll see that that's what's happening. Now my chairs are selected a little bit. As you can see, the white just spilling over into the chairs. And I have some sky selected. All right. So now it's time to refine our selections, right? Because a good selection should always be refined. It's important to refine a good selection. So what we're going to do is click back over here. I don't know why. We're going to get back on our mask. There we go. And we're going to make our brush a little bit bigger. We'll hit O. And I'm going to just go ahead and hit Shift X, and I'm going to paint out so I can make all of this up here black. All right. I'm using my brush to refine what the luminosity mask did. Now, mind you, you always have to start with the luminosity mask and then paint out whatever you want. Because if you don't start with the luminosity mask, what ends up happening is the luminosity mask will override your brush selections, and then you'll be frustrated. So just don't do it. All right, just don't do it. Now, if I remember correctly, yeah, that's a tree. We don't want to select the tree. So, and I'm gonna do a very rough selection here, but you can absolutely get way more detailed than what I'm doing, right? And I would expect you to. I think you would expect to. And what I'm gonna do is turn on my perfect brush, which is Command R. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just so I can show you that you can get more precise than just painting around. But as you can see, I'm getting right up to those edges as close as I can, and I'm minimizing this, and then I'm just going to paint over that, and I'm really getting, like, you know, making sure that I'm not adding any black and white effect to these chairs. This can take some time, and for a good edit, you're going to need to do this. All right, this is just a part of the photo editing experience. You know, you just put on some good music and you just chill out and you edit your images, right? Choose an image a day and just jam out to some music while you do all these little minor adjustments like so. And they don't have to be entirely perfect, right? There's very few people who are like pixel peeping. It's how does the photo look overall? So, you know, if I didn't want to get in here and mask out all of these little pieces, I don't really have to. All right. I don't think too many people are going to realize that I didn't mask out the chairs unless it's obvious, right? If it's obvious, then fix it. But if it's not, don't beat yourself up. All right. Don't drain your creativity or feel intimidated by needing to make everything so perfect. Very few things are perfect in photography. All right. Even though you look at a magazine cover and you're like, oh, this is perfect. I guarantee you the photographer and the editor will tell you like something was wrong with that photo. All right. But to a person who has no idea what went into making that photo, you're not going to know any better. So it's fine. All right. So as you can see, I have a better selection on my chairs. So when I close this out, it doesn't add the black and white adjustment to my chairs. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit copy because I have a good selection of everything around the umbrellas. Now I can hit add filter and I'm going to throw in a color enhancer just for fun. I'm going to hit the color enhancer filter here and I'm going to paste my mask in and then I'm going to invert it. And for fun, I'm just going to throw in some vibrance and some saturation. And look at that. Now I have blue chairs with a subdued looking background. And that's all because I was able to get a good mask going. So there you have that. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these refinement tools. And mind you, if I wanted to, I could throw in a masking bug filter and you can get up to 9 masking bugs on one image, all right, or one filter, whatever. So there's a lot of different options available, all right. The copy and paste feature is just as simple as that. You literally click copy and then you go to another filter and you click paste. All right. That's not complicated. All right. So now let me just go ahead and get rid of that because that's cool and all, but not what I'm looking for right now. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my curves adjustment layer. And as you can see, my photo brightens up again, but it just made it easier for me to get the selection that I wanted. And that's why I forgot to come back and turn that off. I just realized that it was still on, my bad. But I think you get the picture. And as you can see, I got some black and white adjustment that's going on in this one area. So one of the things that you have to do is make sure you're on the right effect that you want to adjust before you click on it, all right? Or before you start painting. And then I'm going to hit the mask tool over here. And of course, you can hit the B key to get your masking brush. I just preferred to click on it that time. And I'm just going to go ahead and mask that out. And I don't know what is going on here. Why won't you delete? I don't want you there. Huh. I guess that's something on the seat, and that's just the color that it is in the, let me turn off the black and white. Yeah, okay. So sometimes you got stuff on seats because with the black and white adjustment layer off, it still does the same exact thing. So there you have it. Good times, right? Good times. All right. hit Command 0. Now let's go ahead and look at refining. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and we're going to try and refine the edge here. So I'm going to click on the refine brush, and the very first tool is the refine brush. Like I just said that, right? It's the refine brush. And this one, you're going to brush along the edges to really just clean up things, right? So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. You want to make it approximately half the size of whatever the edge is to the background, right? So this, or I'm sorry, twice the size, with half of the background, half of the foreground or whatever the item is. And we're just going to brush along the edge here. You don't have to be 100% perfect. ON1 is pretty intelligent. I do recommend you do this in segments. So little by little. And as you can see, it starts to really refine and add in that edge. So I'm just going to come around here just a little bit more because sometimes you do need to be a little bit more precise. Otherwise, it doesn't look natural for the blend, right? And then once you have gone over it and it just doesn't seem to be capturing very well, then what you want to do is come up here to the chisel tool. Now, what the chisel tool does is it helps get rid of fringe. And that's essentially what this is. All right. So I have a pretty decent mask selection. If I hit O, you can see it's pretty sharp, but there's a fringe because the sky is a lot brighter than the umbrella is. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint over. Oh, I need to be on the plus so I can paint in. And it's just going to help with reducing that fringe. As you can see, it's very, very faint, and it's going away little by little. Sometimes you got to just work back and forth over it, but the fringe is going away and it's just chopping it down. So let's go ahead and hit O. And as you can see, it's making my edges a little bit more jagged than I would like them to be. All right. So then that's when you go to the last tool, which is the blur tool. Now, the blur tool, you want to make sure that this is a low amount. And same concept, you want this to be fairly small, and you're just going to go around the edge and you're going to blur your edge. So that way you can really like make that blend work a little bit better. And when you hit the O key, you can see that some of these chiseled marks that I was trying to get rid of the fringe on, they just get a little bit smoother or more smooth, I guess is the correct English. And we'll just keep painting little by little. And now this is where the feathering kind of comes in, and you can feather it however you want. Yeah, we'll feather it like so. We'll hit O, and it just gives it a little bit better selection. You can really like zoom in and refine in that capacity. Now we're like almost seeing pixels here. But as you can see, it is getting that edge. I'll be honest, ON1 does not have the greatest edge refining tools. This is not like a Photoshop or Affinity Photo. If you want to do something super minute, then you should absolutely go get one of those programs and use that. But for a all-in-one raw processor, this is actually not bad. All right. So we'll hit Command 0. And there you have the overall adjustment. So let's just recap for a second. We went over the masking options that you have. And then we also went over all of the tools or the options inside of the masking tool overall. And then we went into the refinement options. All right. And I also showed you how to change your overlay by clicking on mask, coming down to view mode, and then hitting either one of these. Now, I'll show you this red overlay while brushing. I don't know if this is any good. I don't typically use it, but you might want to use it. So I'm just going to click, and as you can see, it's showing me where I'm painting. Now, because I'm either painting in or painting out, I typically know what I'm going to get. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. I don't know why it went to that. It went to refine mask, and I don't want that. Now it's thinking, because it thinks all of that is an edge. So if you ever do this, it's painful. Or at least it takes time. So, and if you have comments or questions, please drop them in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And I don't know if my ON1 just crashed or not. I gave it too much information to think about, and it came back with nothing. So you want to make sure that you're on mask. We'll go ahead and blow up the size of this and hit paint in, because I want to paint white in this area that's black to reveal the mask. And now with my mask selected as red overlay while painting, I am going to go ahead and start painting, and it does. Why isn't it showing the, oh, there we go. I had the overlay off. So now as I paint, the red area is protected. So wherever you see red, that means your effect is not. And wherever you don't see red, that means your effect is. All right. And then when you stop clicking or stop painting, the red goes away. And now you have a odd looking thing. Now I'm just going to go ahead and start painting this back in. And as you can see, red is showing me all the places where my effect is not. I don't find this a very useful tool personally, but maybe you will find this useful, which is why I'm showing it. But you have to make sure that your overlay is turned on. The show hide mask has to be turned on, because if it's off and you paint, Shift X, then all you get is to see the effect. And that's typically how I like to work, because if I can see what I'm doing, especially if it's a drastic effect like this. Now, if it's something like contrast, or you're painting in a little bit of film grain and it's kind of hard to see, and you want to make sure that you're actually painting it into specific areas, I fully understand if you decide to use an overlay that shows you where you're painting. All right. So I'm going to go back to grayscale, because you've seen the red one and there's not much to see in that. So now let's transition over to the local adjustment, because as I mentioned before, whenever you go to local adjustment, note over here on the left, it changes the local. Instead of getting the masking brush tool, you get the local tool. And you also get a different menu bar. And notice that AI Auto is not there. Okay? AI Auto is not here. Very important for you to realize that. Now, what you're typically doing with a local adjustment is something along the lines of exposure, dodging, burning, or like a unique enhancement in that regard. So if you want to use a mask where AI Auto was used, and let me just go to a different photo to demonstrate this, because I think that it works better if I demonstrate how that could work for you. All right, so we will go to this photo right here. And if you haven't noticed, I'm using a bunch of summer photos, or at least summertime like photos. So here's one with apparently Ray-Bans. You know what? I don't want to see any logos. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use the clone stamp this time. Minimize. Hit Option. I'll take some color from there. And we'll just go ahead and paint this away. Look at that. Ray-Ban logo gone. I'll come up here this time. Sorry, this is not part of the tutorial. Just something that was bothering me. All right, now that that is done, we'll go ahead and return to the local tab. Yes, the local tab. Or actually, let's go to the masking tab. And I want to select just the glasses this time. So I'm going to hit AI Auto. I'm already on keep, so I'm going to paint over the glasses just like this. And paint over this side. And we'll make my brush a little bit smaller. I just want to make sure that I get a good selection here. And make it a little bit smaller, get the bridge of the glasses. Come more over here. And I'll get down here. Just because there's sand on the frame of the glasses, I want to make sure ON1 knows that I still want, like, I'm okay with that sand being on there. Just trying to tell the program what's cool and what's not cool. All right, cool. Now I'll hit Shift X, make my brush larger, and I am just going to paint one big circle around these glasses like this. And I'm going to hit apply and see what happens. Okay, ON1 did a pretty decent job, which again, this is why you want to make sure that you tell ON1 what you want, what you don't want. And sometimes it'll just be like, nah, man, I'm going to give you what I'm going to give you. And that's where you have to know how to use the refining tools, or just using a brush and manually painting it out. You know, that's always a way of doing it. Okay, now we'll hit apply. I think that's going to get us a tighter selection. Yeah, that's good enough for our purposes today. I'll even try to clean up just this little piece right here, and that'll be the last pass. All right, AI selection done. So now I'm going to hit OK. This is going to apply to my mask. And now I am in the refine tool. And actually, that's a pleasant surprise. It went ahead and added this already inside of the adjustment module. So if you select local and then you go to AI masking, or then you go to your masking brush while the local tab is selected, okay, I did not figure that out until just now. I just learned something new. So literally, if you click on the local tab and then you hit B for masking, you'll get the AI auto tool, and you'll be able to do your AI auto, and it'll apply it. It will apply it to your local adjustment. So now, because I don't want to do anything to the glasses in this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and invert this mask. And then I'm going to close the mask options, and I want to darken everything. So I'll just pull down the exposure. All right. And now I'm going to hit add adjustment. Come back to the glasses. I'm going to copy the glasses adjustment, or the glasses mask, I should say. I'm going to hit paste, and then I'm going to invert And this time I'm just hit lighten and see what happens. Boom. Now I have glasses that are like, hey, what's up, bro? You know? And maybe even open up some of the shadows on the glasses. You can see the photographer in the glasses now. That's kind of cool. You can also see my poor clone stamp edit there, but whatever. Maybe throw some haze into it, or yeah. So now you get the point, right? You can make mask, and this isn't about editing the photo as much as it is with learning how to use the masking tools. But I have access to all of the exact same features, but now instead of me working on and this doesn't really do much of anything. You can see it's doing something on the frame right in this area, but because the frames themselves are mostly black, probably will be more, yeah, it's not doing anything. All right. So now I want to show you just kind of a cool effect. All right. If I hit add adjustment, I'm going to put like a glow kind of on the glasses. I don't know. We'll see how this works out. So I'm going to select a color. I'm going to go with a yellow color. You can obviously select a color from the image, but I'm going to go with a yellow color. And then I'm going to make my brush size just a little bit smaller. And I'm going to go around the edges of the brush. I don't know if this is going to work well or not, but I'm doing it anyway because I can. And this is a local adjustment, by the way. All right, so now the local adjustment itself is like a mask, right? Because that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm masking in my adjustment. Now what I'm going to do is come up here to my blending options. I'm going to hit luminosity. Nope, not luminosity. Not color either. Maybe overlay. Yeah, that could work. And I'll pull this down a little bit. And I'm going to go back to my mask, and I'm going to feather this quite a bit because I want it to be like a glow right around the glasses. And I think that's getting there. That's getting there. Well, now let's say that I only want the glow to be at the bottom of the glasses. And maybe I'll feather it a little bit less so that way it can be noticeable. All right. Let's say that I only want the feather at the bottom of the glasses. With the masking selected, I can come over here to my radial adjustments or whatnot, and I'm just going to click right over the top. And what is that doing? We're going to take a look at the mask here in a second. But first, we'll do this. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening to the mask. As you can see, with my gradient tool on, it is cutting the mask in half, and it's essentially masking the mask, right? So instead of all of this going over the top, it only covers the bottom now. And you could see that in the image. There's no glow at the top, and I'll make this more apparent. Yeah. So there's more, or there's less, or there's none actually. There's nothing at the top, and it starts to show up transitioning in right here until it hits 50%, and then it transitions in a little bit more, and then it hits 100%. Now, if I want that transition to be shorter, I can do that, and then I can literally just pull this up or down, and wherever that dotted line is, again, 100% beyond it, 0% beyond it this way, and it slowly starts to fade in, starting from this dotted line at the top. So the smaller you make the closer you make these dotted lines to each other, the less the effect is going to actually transition, and it'll just come in. Now, this really does become helpful, handy, unique, cool, whatever you want to use as your catchphrase on this. It really does come in handy when you're trying to mask in multiple adjustments. And you can get up to 9 additional masks. So let's say, maybe I want to put an additional mask of, we'll go with a vignette. We'll make it a little bit smaller. Okay. And I'll drag it up here. So maybe I want and you know what? I'm going to do it like this. We're just going to have some fun here. All right. So now I want to mask out the sides and just keep the top there. Why would you do it this way? I have no idea, but that's okay. I'm going to hit add. And now, as you can see, it's added in a gradient filter. So if I wanted another radial filter, all I have to do is come up here to the drop down and select radial or vignette. And now I have another radial filter. And again, this is not a mask to mask in an adjustment. This is a concealment mask for whatever you have already, what you initially ended up masking. Why did that sound so confusing? The first mask, this is my initial mask. This is the primary mask. This is a secondary mask. And as I come over, it is just retouching, like wherever these lines intersect, right? So I have this coming halfway through the lens there, and this one coming to the other half of the lens. Wherever these lines intersect, it's not really doing anything to the overall image. Now I can click again, hit vignette. If ON1 ever adds the ability to copy a filter, that would be great. All right, but they didn't. And to the best of my knowledge right now, you can only apply these masks, whatever the selection is up here, which in this case is center, so it's protecting the middle. Everything that's on the inside of this circle is protected. Everything out of it goes into some form of transition, right? If I change this to edges, it changes it changes my filter. I don't know why I did that, but overall, it changes all of the other filters as well. So when you're working with these, just make sure that you're cognizant of all of that. Now, I do want to show one last thing, which is kind of cool, and you can get up to 9 layers of filters on one image. What would be nice is if they allowed you to cut out different sections. So if I wanted a radial filter over here to show this part of an adjustment, and then maybe a radial filter down here to show one part, and a radial filter over here If you know how to do that, please drop it in the comment section. But I have not been able to figure that out just yet. And it is not necessarily shared very well inside of the user manual. So there you have it. So now what I do want to do, we'll go ahead and reset this because that's not really important anymore. We're going to do the color range. Now I'm going to hit color range, use my eyedropper tool. Now this is, you can do this effect. As you can see, it's choosing a random color. There's two ways of choosing color. I like to use the eyedropper tool because I can click, and now I am only applying color to just the tonality that's there. And if I want to make it smaller and say, you know what, I think this is the appropriate color. Now yellow is only going to be applied to this selected color up here. And then of course, if I want to change my color, I can just click and drag, and you know, maybe I want to make a blue looking background thing, whatever. Look at that. Now I have this really cool blue toned image, and I didn't really have to work too hard to get there. This is a really cool way of adding color into an image in a unique and very helpful way. All right. So I recommend just playing around with this. Obviously, you can crank it all the way up and then it gets really, really blue, or you can make it like just like a blue shadowy undertone. And then again, you have your window here, so you can say, you know what, I want to apply this more to just the brights. And then this is where you have to start moving around your sliders, and look at that. Now it's only applied to the brighter images of, or I'm sorry, the brighter segments of the image. All right. This is a really cool way of doing that. And you can also use color range inside of the gradient tool. So if I select color range and then I click here, you can see that it is only applying to the range that has been selected overall. So what you could do, right? We'll hit view. You can make this go over the entire image. We'll go ahead and pull this back down, and we'll make sure that it's evenly dispersed. You know, you can favor the shadows if that's what you want to do. If you have a darker image, maybe that's what you want to do. And now, again, 100% applied, and then starts moving backwards until it's at 50% applied in the middle, and then it moves backwards until it's not applied at all on this side of the dotted line. Once you understand that, you literally can just do this right here. Like, I don't want it to be applied beyond this horizon line, so I'll just drag this in and go like there, right? So now it's just like this blue washed tone, and then I have the sky up here. I can do something completely different. You can see what the overlay looks like with that. Again, it's only applying it to this color range. If I want to increase the range, more stuff should start to turn white here, as you can see. I don't know if that's a desired effect on the image or not, but you can do a lot of really cool things with using the color range. I really enjoy using the color range. I use it almost as frequently as I can because it makes it easier to make selections. All right. And again, I did this with a solid paint color, but you could come in here to add filter And you could use a LUT even, right? I should probably go and turn off this particular adjustment and any other adjustments that I may have. And I kind of like the glasses looking that way. And I do like the background being darker. All right. So we'll just say that, you know what, I want to apply the LUT to just a specific color, right? Don't even worry about tones. Just say I want to apply it to a color. You can hit color range and it's going to automatically choose that color. But let's say, you know what, I think I'm going to use my color picker this time, and I just want to move around until I find where the adjustment, the effect actually works. This is a practical way of working. You can even come into the sliders, go to RGB sliders, and just start moving around, your red, your greens, and your blues until you get to a color. So like the sand, I know that the sand is more of a red color, right? So I want to increase my reds, and maybe we will bring down on the blues so I get a little bit more cyan in the colors. I don't know, maybe even bring over the greens to throw in a little bit more magenta into the greens, increase the reds. And now I'm starting to fine tune where this LUT is going to go. I can increase the range to obviously choose more light colors, or decrease the range. And it's really only going to apply whatever effect I have into that color value. So, and that's essentially what we're doing here, right? We're just trying to find the color value, apply the color to that value. If I hit O, it brings up the mask, and you can see where all of that is going. And then the cool thing is, while you're working in the mask, you can literally just move around your sliders and figure out where you really want that to be affecting. So color range is a extremely powerful way of masking your images inside of ON1 Photo Raw, and I highly recommend that you use the color range feature if you are trying to fine tune where you want to make your selections at. And then of course you can always come in with a brush afterwards, and you can just very simply say, you know what, I don't actually like this here, so I'm gonna get rid of you. And that's a very easy way of doing it. And you can combine your mask, as I showed you earlier. You can combine your masks as well, or your filters, whatever these things are, the brush, the gradient tool, you can combine those to make a ultimate selection. Maybe you want something where you take the masking bug, go with a vignette. We'll just click there. We'll go with edges, so that way it kind of just fades into a particular area, and then we'll fade it like that, and maybe even just make this a little bit smaller. So now when we hit O, you can see that this effect is really only happening right in this area. This could be a great way of highlighting something inside of your image. This could be a great way of just capitalizing on something. There's so many different ways that you can use the color range tool with your filters that really just gets your image to a completely new level. All right, something that you should probably just play around with. And again, you can use the spectrum here and just click and drag around until you find a color that works for the range in which you want to affect. You're not really seeing much of anything. I guess my computer's moving slow for whatever reason, but I think you get the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel that because there's no need for that to be there. And we'll go back to the webcam. So, hey, there you have it. That is using the masking tools inside of ON1 Photo Raw to really one, select everything, and then two, fine tune your selections so that way you get what you're looking for. If you have questions, drop them in the comment section below. And, if you are interested in seeing videos like this, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I post content really centered around ON1 Photo Raw, hopefully in a digestible way for everyone who is just looking on how to use a filter or how to use anything inside of ON1 Photo Raw. If you got questions about it, you can leave those in the comment section. I do get back to all of the comments, and I try my best to help out wherever I can. I also highly recommend that everyone takes a look at the user guide. There's very few user guides that are actually helpful, but the ON1 user guide, I spend time inside of that just understanding the inner workings of ON1 Photo Raw. The team over at ON1, they did a really, really good job at putting that together. And you can rest assured I've read many manuals, some of which have frustrated me because I didn't actually get to learn the thing that I went to look up. But inside the ON1 manual, they do a really good job at showing you what the tools inside of the software can do. But it's your responsibility to find a creative way of manipulating the tools inside of the software to really get what you're trying to get out of it. Now, that's something that I try to help with here on the channel, which is why I'm recommending you to subscribe. If you are just now finding this channel, welcome. My name's Chris. I am the content creator here at Free Will Photos. If you are new to photo editing and you're looking for something easy to just get involved with, it does everything you need to do for photo editing, especially as a new photographer. ON1 Photo Raw is a great software. If you check the description box below, you'll be able to find a link to go download a free trial. And if you purchase from it, it is an affiliate link, and I do get a little bit of support here for the channel. But the good news is it's at no extra cost to you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial, and Ernest, I really appreciate you hanging around and providing the feedback. So with that being said, until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.